copy of Read the Bones and 1 copy of Underworld Connections than 2 copies of Underworld Connections. Especially in mana-hungry decks where tying up your land is not necessarily the best thing to be doing. So no surprise to see the split in this list as well.
Overgrown Tomb puts BBD down to 18, and we're going to fire off with an Elvish Mystic for number 2 on our Season 2 Open Series leaderboard. But again, he has already qualified for our end-of-year Players Championship. So he's just kind of free-rolling these tournaments, able to play some different decks. He knows that he's going to be in the top 16, so he'll have 2 buys for the Invitational that's happening next weekend. So as a result, we've seen him actually play Junk Constellation last weekend, lost playing for top 8, and now we see him off to a nice start here with a Junk Reanimator. Plays a turn 2 Sylvan Carrier before passing the turn back.
And who doesn't like to battle? You know?
I love to battle.
When did we have to have these incentives, like points and things, to go to tournaments?
That's true. I just battle just to battle.
Yeah.
Devour Flesh. Shiels wants to kill one of these mana accelerants.
I drove to Toronto to play in a team PTQ, and I was already qualified. Who says that there needs to be some light at the end of the tunnel?
I did that a couple times too.
It was a terrible mistake, but I did it.
No way, it has to be fun. Team PTQs are a blast.
No. I guess no, it doesn't have
That's
to
a
be.
healthy argument there. Just no. Sylvan Carrier's at number 2 from BBD, passing the turn back over to Shiels. Brauin having some, I guess I would call mana issues. I mean, he's playing lands theoretically. He just has to cast them. And now here's a Lifebane Zombie main deck from David Shiels. You see, because he's Salvage, Elspeth, another Caryatid, and Obsidian. Brauin known for playing in a Banishing Light.
Now, what's funny about this is Brian Bronduin starts so far, gives all the indicators that he's playing in Gen Monster, so I'm sure Shiels was just casting this Lifebane to cast it. I bet he was not expecting to hit some pretty juicy targets like another Sylvan Caryatid or an Obsidian.
Curious on what he wants to take here.
I think that I like taking the Caryatid.
Obsidian's pretty juicy.
Depends what it in Shiels. If he has a Hero's Downfall, some clean answer to the Obsidian, then I think that you take the Caryatid. If not, then you can take the Obsidian.
Yeah, he says, Obsidian, kindly leave. It's also, I guess it doesn't, solidify Brauin into casting Banishing Light. He could just cast the Caryatid to pass the turn back. He could also salvage for a land and play Caryatid, and that's what it looks like he's going to do. You see a bunch of lands are going to turn over. How about 4 another Grizzly Salvage? Brauin will get 1 of these. Pretty
juicy here. I mean, now he goes up to 5 mana, and then next turn with a land, it could be Elspeth and play that fast.
Mm-hmm. Down to 17. Follow this up. These 2 players actually did test together for the last Pro Tour, or excuse me, 2 Pro Tours ago. So they're very familiar with each other. Seems like they're pretty good friends as they do battle here.
So it looks like Shield does not have the 4th land here for its Desecration Demon. Or rather, an untapped 4th land.
Temple of Silence, take a look. Top card, we'll see where it goes. Shields does have a Pack Rat in his hand, so he does have something to play this turn.
Now, if he knows what the Junk Reanimator list is up to, there's an especial priority to get rid of the Obsidian. Maybe some other threats you don't really care that much about, but Obsidian synergizes so well with Whip of Erebos that maybe that's a special case where you just don't want that card to end up in Brian's graveyard at all costs.
One thing about Shields, you see the Hero's Downfall in his hand as well. Very methodical player.
Yeah.
Doesn't ever do anything too quickly, but very, very skilled. Consistently playing on the Pro Tour, and again has won a Grand Prix. Going to play a Pack Rat and just simply pass the turn back over to Bronduin, who's going to untap those Caryatids, couple of lands, draws a land for the turn. Not sure if a Temple or an Overgrown Tomb there, but again, you do see the Elspeth, you see Vraska in the group as well.
Yeah, appears to be a Temple.
Temple of Malady looks to be what Brauin has picked up for this turn. He's going to start there, a little scry time. Going to look at the hand again. Vanishing Light, Elspeth, and Vraska are the cards that Brian's looking at. Top card is a mystery to us at home. We'll see where Brauin wants to put that. Looks like he's going to put it to the bottom.
I mean, Brian's got a lot of power in his hand, certainly, but it's not clear he can quite start deploying these Planeswalkers. I mean, the Lifebane Zombie is a special case of, in terms of being able to tax those Planeswalkers. And Brauin has to tap down these Caryatids, too, to do anything.
You know, if Vraska comes into play, for example, this turn, maybe it fires down a Lifebane Zombie, and then Shields can just kill it because there's no blockers.
Right.
You know, attack with a Pack Rat, make a Pack Rat, maybe play a Mutavault, who knows. Looks like Brian's going to use all of his mana this turn, which I do kind of like, actually. Vraska's going to come in. It's going to take down. He's actually going to shoot down a Pack Rat. I'm much more concerned with that card. I suppose he does have the answer to Lifebane Zombie with the Banishing Light.
Yeah. Not an ideal trade here, but Brian's just trying to keep the board and his life total as stable as possible and set the stage for Elspeth or something else to win the game from there.
Blood Baron of a scope of the draw here for Shiels. Again, 3 copies of that card. So Shiels how he wants to begin. Seems like an easy start, which is take down that Vraska, and he'll follow up with a Desecration Demon, pass the turn back over to Duin, who draws a copy of Whip of Erebos. He goes tapping mana immediately. It's going to be an Elspeth. See how Elspeth wants to roll. Tick up or down.
I think he's going to tip up here. Ticking up also answers the Desecration Demon.
Yeah. Momentarily, though, not permanently.
I think minusing is just too bad to lose your Elspeth to a Lifebane zombie attack, so. This is not the easiest road for Brian either to keep this Elspeth alive, but it's better than losing it for very little value.
Elspeth will take up. 3 soldiers are going to come in for the Sun's champion. Passing her back to Shiels, who does draw his 5th land, so now Blood Baron can be online. If Shiels would like to cast that, you also see the Hero's Downfall in his hand, another Desecration Demon as well. So pretty good hand here. For David.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty good setup for David to go ahead and Hero's Downfall the Elspeth and cast a Pack Rat. It's a lot of pressure.
Coming from a couple different angles as well.
Yep.
You've got the Flyer out there. You've got the 3/1 Intimidate. You've got, of course, a Pack Rat sub-game to be worried about as well if you're Duin. Desecration Demon trigger on the stack. Gonna sacrifice Soldier Token. Demon will become a 7/7. Lifebane. It's going upstairs. Not too much of a surprise, you did mention. Hero's Downfall can take care of Elspeth, which it will. And a Pack Rat makes for a very nice turn for David Shiels.
He's doing a really good job of maximizing his resources every turn of the game so far.
Duin will draw a card for the turn. It is a Swamp.
And now Brian really would know where to go. He does have a removal spell in his hand, but there's multiple threats in play for David. He has a whip in his hand, but not anything to do with that whip.
Yep.
So a lot of powerful draws in Brian's deck, and a lot of time he's got some chump blockers and things that he can sacrifice to the demon, but not a lot going on right now.
There's the whip. See if Brian wants to cast Banishing Light or not. Looks like he's going to do some attacking with these tokens, and he will. Can't imagine Shiels has much interest in trading a token with a Pack Rat.
No chance.
So he's going to go down to 18. And will BBD cast the Banishing Light? That's the last card in his hand. Shiels with 2 cards. Brian with 1.
Almost feels like you had to Banishing Light this Pack Rat now.
Yeah, the question I think is, what are you supposed to Banishing Light? I think like Brian's plan was to save the Banishing Light for the Lifebane zombie, but that time has passed.
Yeah. It doesn't take that long for Pack Rat to just become lethal from the spot. It looks innocuous, but 2 turns unchecked here, and Brian has to start chump blocking with his Caryatids.
Draw there for Shiels is a Plains. Again, Desecration Demon and Blood Baron with Scope are the cards in the black-white mid-range player's hand.
And David does have to worry about Elspeth coming off the top and then him having too many big creatures in play, so how he paces his threats is a concern here, but he's definitely firmly in command.
Demon Trigger's going to go on the stack. Soldier Token and sacrifice. In comes Lifebane Zombie yet again. Let's see what the follow-up play is going to be. It seems like maybe Demon is better at this point. It's kind of interesting, actually. I mean, both kind of get dismantled by Elspeth coming off the top of the deck and then minusing. So I think that's, probably your primary concern if you're Shiels at this point. I kind of think that you want the Flyer more than the protection from white and black creatures just because Caryatid can just block so many times.
It's close. The problem is that, with 2 Desecration Demons in play, if Brian draws Elspeth, he can keep the demons in play by plussing, which makes it a little bit more.
That's true.
The Blood Baron requires a minus, which then just allows the Lifebane Zombie to take care of it clean. But this is the most pressure, and Brian needs to draw a Elspeth real fast in this world too. So,
and for Brian, there are only 2 Elspeths in his starting 16. He's already drawn 1 of them.
Yeah.
Now we don't know if Shiels knows that, of course. Let's see what Brian's casting here. Taps 3 mana pretty quickly. This is another copy of Banished Light to take down a Desecration Demon. You see him take down the smaller one instead of the big one. Looks like we're gonna have a whip activation. Elvish Mystic feeling frisky.
Boom.
And for one, and one with the Soldier, Brauin will gain a little bit of life back. He'll go up to 12 before passing the turn back over to Shiels. Shiels will take a draw.
What would be the reason there for Brauin to take out the smaller demon?
That was my question too, actually. I'm not entirely sure, as opposed to the big one.
I don't think there's anything in his list.
Yeah, I'm looking through it right now. I'm not entirely sure why that would be the appropriate line. I mean, I'm sure he has a reason.
Yeah.
But I can't find it right now on what it would be. Sacrificing, of course, the Soldier token is locked down the Desecration Demon, making it into a 9/9. Lifebane Zombie is going to come in, and now Obsidat will as well. Brauin losing to one of his favorite cards now. A little drain in brain, as BBD would say. Unfortunately, it's happening to him. As he will untap, he will take a draw, sitting at 7 life. Obsidat threatening to come back into play next turn. Picks up a copy of Elvish Mystic. That's not going to help him very much.
The old Whip of Erebos 0 and 1 power creature deck.
Ever heard of it? A bunch of mana acceleration and nothing to accelerate into. Shields going to trigger the Obsidat. Brauin going to go down to 5. Shields going to go up to his starting life total of 20. Take a draw here, a copy of Hero's Downfall. You can see the power level of these black decks. It is very high.
There's no end of good threats and reactive cards that you can play.
Yep.
Mixing and matching them the right way for the metagame is a challenge, but you're definitely at no shortage of good cards, that's for sure.
Obsidat going to get blocked there by the Elvish Mystic. Brauin is going to go down to 2. I think it's rather likely we'll see Obsidat go hiding here. And the interesting thing here for Shields is if he casts another spell or not, because I don't think that he needs to.
It seems unlikely from this vantage point.
And he is just going to hide Obsidat. He's going to hold onto his Lifebane Zombie as Blood Baron. Not even showing Blood Baron. Brauin will draw a Temple Garden, and he'll pick up the rest of his permanents. David Shields going to win game number 1 here over Brauin Brauin. Black-white mid-range up a game over Junk Reanimator. As we head over to the sideboards, I've got BBD in front of me. I'll see 2 copies of Golgari Charm and Obsidat Ghost Council, 3 copies of Blood Baron Viscopa, 2 Sin Collector, 2 Pool of Chronos World Eater, 2 Ultimate Price, 3 copies of Bile Blight. We saw actually Bile Blight in the sideboard of Brauin's Junk Constellation deck last weekend. Was a little bit surprised to see that there, but the reason was pretty straightforward. I have a lot of difficulty with Pack Rat, so you have to imagine it's probably going to come in here too.
Yeah, for sure. It also gives you a little bit of game against Elspeth. Random beatdown draws that happen to draw 2 copies of the same threat. I mean, it's not hard to rationalize Bile Blight, and as an answer to Pack Rat, of course, it does a lot of good work.
Ultimate Price can come in here as well. Take care of Desecration Demon, take care of Pack Rat, take care of Lifebane Zombie. You can certainly make arguments for Sin Collector as well as Blood Baron of Viscopa. Heck, even Golgari Charm as well.
I think Blood Baron's going to be great in this matchup.
Yep.
Really, the only way for black-white decks to get out of that card is Devour Flesh, and Brauin has no end of Elvish Mystic, Sylvan Caryatid, Sin Collector type cards.
Yeah.
The combination of Sin Collector and Blood Baron is really tough on black-white decks because the Sin Collector can take Devour Flesh or absorb a Devour Flesh, and that's really the only answer that black-white decks have to that card. On Dave's side of the table, 2 copies of Farika's Cure and Erebos God of the Dead and Underworld Connections, 3 Doomblades, 4 copies of Duress, a Deicide. There's 1 in the main deck and then 1 more on the board. Copy of Obsidat Ghost Council, a Glare of Heresy, and a Whip of Erebos. I think he's going to want the additional copy of Obsidat here. I think the 4 copies of Duress are likely to come in as well. Brauin has shown, he's got Grizzly Salvage, he's got a variety of Planeswalkers, Whip of Erebos, and so forth. So a lot of targets here for Duress. I'm curious to see if he's going to bring in the Underworld Connections and the Erebos God of the Dead here, because to me it's not clear that this is really a card advantage battle. Brauin is fully capable of overwhelming the board or setting up synergies with Whip of Erebos that invalidate everything that Dave does, even if he draws extra cards. So that being said, the matchup's also on the slower side, so that maybe there's more room to leverage sources of card advantage. So those to me are the cards I'm most interested about to see if David brings in.
So as we wait here for game number 2, I do have a fun question to ask for you. We've seen, these base black decks have splashes. You've got the normal version with no splash. You've got the black-green version that we watched and we know Ari Lax is playing off to a 2-0 start. And we've got this version with white in it for Blood Baron, Obsidat, Elspeth, Banishing Light, whatever you'd like to dabble in for white. Which version do you think is the best and most well-positioned right now?
I don't know. There's pros and cons. To me, the big question is how much do you really want to be messing around with Blood Baron? Because to me, it's not the best card if the metagame is pretty saturated with Mizium Mortars or even just like against Jund monsters in general. It's not the best threat. They can overpower it, or some of them still have mid-deck Mizium Mortars. But there are aspects of the metagame that are incredibly soft to Blood Baron. and being able to back those up with Thought Seizes and other discard spells. There's a lot of decks that can't beat that sort of game plan. So to me, it's more about what kind of metagame that are you predicting. I think Brian's list here is probably very solid against a deck like Jund Monsters because there's so many different angles of attack, whereas David doesn't quite have that going on. But David's deck strikes me as being better against the Espers of the world.
And the one thing, too, is, just by talking to a few people here this weekend and kind of taking a look around, there's a lot of Jund Monsters in the room.
Yeah.
Which isn't too surprising.
It's performed very well and very consistently on the Open Series, and the most consistent Swiss performer, in my mind, Chris Van Meter, has been playing it to a lot of success for a couple of months now.
Yeah, you have to imagine it's pretty hard not to want to play. When you see CVM just destroying these tournaments every single week with Jund Monsters.
Also, there's a lot of people that just don't want to sit on their heels and play 45-minute rounds with Esper and Blue-White Control the entire tournament too. So there's a lot of people that are naturally going to gravitate towards more aggressive strategies because they either prefer to do that or they're concerned about cumulative fatigue or what have you. And so there's a large portion of the room that's already going to gravitate towards something like Jund Monsters. And then the fact that it's been doing very well the last couple of months that's the last piece of the puzzle there to rationalize playing it.
So I think that, the thing that's interesting about Jund Monsters too is that the consensus opinion seems to be that is a deck that's very difficult to hate out because it doesn't do just one thing. It's got Pulachronos, it's got Stormbreath Dragon, Domri, all of those things, some removal spells, some discard, what have you. But there isn't one card you can go to try to beat that deck.
For sure. Doomblades are good against it, but you can draw a bunch of Doomblades and then lose to Planeswalkers. So it's not like there's one angle of attack. You basically have to have your entire 75 have a cohesive game plan to beat Jund Monsters. It's not about finding 3 or 4 copies of a particular sideboard card that they can't beat.
Well, we'll be underway in game number 2 here in just a moment. If you guys are just joining us, of course, we do appreciate it. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, Star City Games Open Series here in a beautiful, sunny, and warm Providence, Rhode Island. At SCG Live, hashtag SCGPROV for your tweets all weekend long. We'll be having some fun this weekend as we work our way towards the Season 2 Invitational in Columbus just next weekend. Chris Van Meter leading Season 2 leaderboard with 158 Open Series points. Looks like he's just about locked up the invite to the Players' Championship, but we've got one more to crown next weekend, of course. The Winning Invitational will be going, also getting their likeness on a card, though it will be difficult to top Derek Sheets' Swan token.
It'll be really hard. That one is, for my money, that's the best one.
I really can't argue. My favorite one is still Sam Black's token.
That one
I
is
think
great
it's
too.
Very well done. The avatar of Jerry T is quite good as well, but I tell you, that Swan token is really something.
Yeah. The bird is just so upset.
Wouldn't you be?
And Derek is so thrilled.
Yeah, that's true.
That's my favorite part.
I am
really.
riding a swan.
Yeah. And the swan's like, someone is riding me. Get this guy off of me. Sweet.
Looks like Shiels is going to take a mulligan down to at least 6 cards here. PBD ready to go with his 7. Again, 2 Grand Prix champions here. Dave Shiels actually winning the Grand Prix. Grand Prix, for me at least, this is when it's kind of on hiatus, but I was watching from the sidelines. Grand Prix Gallblade.
Yeah.
That was the, to be fair, that's probably Grand Prix Jace, as there were 32 copies of Jace the Mind Sculpt in the top 8. There were 4 Rug Delver, there's 4 Rug, like, mid-range decks. I don't remember exactly. The Lotus Cobra Rug deck. Yeah. And then 4 of this deck, 4 of Callblade in the top 8. And a real shockaroo that Callblade ended up winning the tournament. Not really, but, that Rug deck was really good. That was solidly deck, like, 1B. Or like deck 2, but Callblade was just deck 1.
Yeah, the Open that I played, I didn't even the one that I won in New Jersey during that span of time. I had not seen the Rug deck really before. I was familiar with Callblade, but I wasn't really following Magic that much at the time. And I played against the Rug decks, and my reaction was, why would this be good? What's going on here that's sweet? Whereas Callblade, you can tell right away there's something super busted going on there.
It's not much of a surprise, Callblade. Little too good.
I mean, Lotus Cobra's
that's a really good card.
Super powerful, super fun. I get the charm, but...
And, being able to play a Jace that had a schedule and being able to cast Titans that had a schedule, that's good stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So is Stoneforge Mystic.
Yeah, it's not as good as the other things you could be doing.
Yeah. And that Grand Prix was certainly something. I think that's the Grand Prix really where, the Wizards decided, okay, enough is enough.
No, I mean, they wrote the article. I think Tom O'Pilly wrote an article there that was just more of, we're aware there's a problem, but we're going to take a wait-and-see approach. And then Batter Skull got printed shortly thereafter. So
we're going to wait and see and watch Batter Skull destroy everyone.
Yeah.
Both players going to start off here in the Temple of Silence to begin game number 2.
don't worry, guys. Help is coming. The 2 best cards in the set are Dismember and Batter Skull.
Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me.
No, this will solve all the problems. Okay, sure.
What's that little artifact creature that gets rid of its tokens on cards in New Phyrexia?
Is that like Hex Parasite?
Yeah, they're like, we got Hex Parasite coming and we got 1 mana Despise.
Yep.
Don't worry. We're going to be ushering in a new era where they add Batter Skull and Dismember to the deck and never lose again.
Thoughtseize is going to take a look at 3 copies of Grizzly Salvages, Satyr Wayfinder, and a Temple of Malady.
This is a hand that's set up to grind.
Yeah, this is, Brian, my Grizzly Salvages need to turn into something nice here, pretty much. Brian trying to relive the old days when he was destroying everyone with Junk Reanimator. It's not the same anymore.
Unburial Rites is on a whole different level of power for these kind of decks.
We can't forget about Lingering Souls either.
Yeah. He's been reduced to playing Obsidat's Aid instead of Unburial Rites. Not quite the same thing.
They're a little different. Sin Collector comes rolling off the top here for Brian.
Oof.
Timely.
Sin Collector is just so good. And it's so good when you're supplementing it with Blood Baron too.
I think you have to cast it on this turn too because you don't want to get life being zombied.
Yep.
So Sin Collector comes rolling off. Shields going to expose his hand. You got a Hero's Downfall. That's what that's going to take. And then, of course, 2 Desecration Demons and an Obsidat. So Brian's got to be a little bit scared because there are some real cards coming, assuming Shields draws a land.
Well, these are the kind of draws I feel like Brian's equipped to beat with his Grizzly Salvages. He can find one big threat and win on his own, or try to fill up his graveyard and win the game that way.
Brian does play the Temple really quickly and then passes the turn back.
There's definitely some threatening stuff going on in David's hand, but it feels like this is the type of game Brian's set up to win.
Well, one good top deck deserves another. Sin Collector for Brian and Underworld Connections here for Shields. Looks like Brian picked up a copy of Elvish Mystic for the turn. He's going to start by attacking for 2. Shields going to go down to 16. Satyr Wayfinder's going to join the party. Take a look at a couple of cards. Obsidat's Aid, Courser of Crewfix, a Temple of Silence, another copy of Obsidat's Aid. Those spells are going to go to the graveyard. That Temple of Silence will go to the grip. Will we follow this up with an Elvish Mystic? We're going to do a Grizzly Salvage first. See if we can find an untapped green source. Elspeth, Swamp, Courser, Overgrown. Looks like he wants a Courser.
Yeah, I think Brian at this point is just looking for stuff to do more than being the most efficient possible with his mana.
Temple of Silence. Take a look at the top card. Top card goes to the bottom for BBD. Salvage placed in the graveyard. Courser will go to the grip. He'll kick it back over to Shields. Shields will untap those 3 lands. He'll take a draw. See if he can find a 4th one. He does not. It's a 3rd copy of Desecration Demon to go along with that Obsidat. So he's going to have to pay 1 to go down to 15. Take a draw. Does he find a land this time? He finds a Blood Baron with Scope. I'll tell you what, those are some really good Magic cards.
Yes.
They're just not in play.
And you can see why Brian's list is so well suited to leverage Blood Baron post board. How is David supposed to beat this deck with Devour Flushes? There's so many just pieces of trash that Brian has in play to sacrifice potentially. And an unchecked Blood Baron is, that's Elspeth or bust basically.
Courser of Crewfix going to reveal a Courser of Crewfix after an attack for 3 there. Shields goes down to 12. See if Brian wants to cast a Sylvan Caryatid or this Grizzly Salvage.
If he Grizzly Salvages right now, it gives him a clean look at a land, which he's in the market for here. But the Caryatid also just makes sure that he has more mana for next turn, so.
You might just go with Elvish Mystic as well, just to add more pressure to the board. Because, if he adds this, now we're looking at a 2-turn clock.
Yeah. And there's generally an incentive to attack David's life total when he has Underworld Connections going as well.
Shields picks up a copy of Thoughtseize. He's going to pay 1 and go down to 11, see what he can find here. There's a Swamp. It might be too little too late now. We'll see.
He still can't even follow this up with anything of note, right? He's just playing a land and saying go or casting a Thoughtseize.
Which isn't great either.
No.
Again, the hand of 3 Desecration Demons, a Blood Baron of a Scope, and Obsidat. Shields is going to play that land. Does not have a card like Hero's Downfall in his hand, however.
And even still, 1-for-1 removal is not getting David out of this spot. And his Desecration Demons in hand have very little value as well. So just big trouble here for David.
You see him consulting his hand, taking a look at the board state as well. Another Courser coming, which doesn't have a huge effect on the game, but it's better than nothing if you're Duin. And yeah, Shields, you see he's kind of resigned with the way he passed the turn. But I guess. I can't really do anything. Your board's not great, but it's good enough.
Yep. anything can kill me from this point. So
Pretty much. See the top card is a Temple of Malady. Duin looks like he's going to play Courser, and he does. Wants to be able to get a little more extra life gain, so he's going to go up to 20 after the 2 triggers. Top card is a Godless Shrine. You have to imagine that's going to go to the bottom, and it will. So now we get to see a new card, and that, aha!
Woohoo!
A Sylvan Primordial. Hello.
Someone's escalating the conflict.
Follow this up with another copy of Sylvan Caryatid. We're going to get into the red zone here for 6. Shiels is going to go down to 5, presumably.
And we're casting that bad boy next turn.
I don't know if there's going to be a next turn. Oh, we got a reader. We have a reader, do we? Well, I guess we'll do the same. We'll take a look at Sylvan Primordial here so you guys can see the banned commander card. That's right. Banned.
Well, that card's text box is a little bit different in multiplayer.
Banned. Gone. It's like way too good multiplayer.
I believe that yeah.
Shield's going to draw a card here, go down to 4.
Although,
it's a copy of Erebos. He'll pick up his permanence.
There's so many, I mean, now, granted, I'm no expert on the commander metagame to the extent that it exists, so now take this all with a grain of salt, but it seems like there's probably a lot of really good 7 and 8 mana creatures you can kind of win the game with in multiplayer setups, and the offenders to me seem like Soul Ring, for example.
Well, yeah, that card's really good.
I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. I'm throwing it out there.
I'm not one to really, peruse around the old commander table either, but I have read enough horror stories and articles about Sylvan Primordial being way too good.
You cannot play with Sylvan Primordial. It is just too good resource-wise. You may play with Soul Ring. And Mana Crypt is still legal too, that's a thing?
I'm not sure if that's true. And I also think that commander kind of varies on, I think that in some commander areas Soul Ring is legal and some they aren't.
Okay.
I believe that's the case.
There's the official list, right? I mean, in theory, there's a ban list that's maintained by their equivalent of the DCI. The Duelist Convocation International. Yeah. Sounding the conch and meeting up at some tower somewhere to discuss whether or not, this thing is banned.
I just remember reading, of course, we publish, 4 EDH articles a week. And so I've read a lot of articles that are just like, I can't take it anymore. Every time someone casts, I can't deal with it.
Oh, I get it.
It's too good.
I'm not saying that Sylvan Primordial isn't too good in Commander. I think there just may be some systemic issues with the format that cause cards like this to regularly become too good. That would be
I could see that.
That would be my vote.
I could see that. Okay.
But again, take it with a grain of salt. Not a Commander expert.
All right. I can go with you on that one.
I'd be happy to hear an articulation of the other side of this.
Sheldon, if you're home. Sheldon Menery, the godfather of Commander.
Yep.
I'd love his opinion. I would. It kind of sucks that I just don't have time to play that format because it actually looks like a lot of fun. And I know the people who play it and like it, they just love it.
Yeah, I was in the process of building a Zozu the Punisher deck, but then I heard that everyone starts at 40 life, and so I just stopped. I thought people started at 20. I was like,
of course you don't start at 20. That's just a hill you have to overcome. That's all. You can. I believe you could deal 40.
I don't have 3 hours to sit around and play a game, man. I just don't have. I don't have it in me. I think the idea of one-on-one commander, there's something about that I find charming. I think that I could enjoy that. But
yeah, no, I think that would be fun.
Multiplayer games are not that fun for me, and not because it's multiplayer, but just because of the time that generally goes into playing a game like that. It's no small endeavor.
I like the politics of multiplayer.
I can't stand it.
That's my
favorite. I have a history. I was playing Magic in the mid-90s back where we played all sorts of multiplayer games, and we were often playing at Eugene Harvey's house, and so me and Eugene and a couple of our friends were very serious about Magic, and his younger brother played casually with us, and often it was just about who could best manipulate Eugene's younger brother to do their bidding. So you're basically playing 2-on however much, and Eugene had an edge there because Eugene was his older brother. So
I see.
That was my experience.
I see. That's a good edge to have.
So usually when the multiplayer games got broken out, I just wouldn't play NBA Jam. But I occasionally tapped in and played a bit.
What a great game that is.
Yeah.
A tier 1 video game.
Right.
I would like to actually see NBA Jam now, just to see how out of date it is.
I think you'd be surprised. There's a lot of games that have not aged gracefully. It's probably still fun, but I remember thinking at the time, like, this is insane. Nothing could ever be cooler than this. And I've had that experience with a lot of different products that I grew up with, where I play it now, and it's just, this is the corniest looking thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's video games now, or a variety of different products, where 20 years from now we're going to say, wow, that looks corny.
GoldenEye.
Or what's the all trapezoid game, Star Fox or whatever? that one is not aged gracefully.
The all trapezoids all the time.
Yeah,
Yes.
just trapezoids.
Well, you know what they say, old is gold, as it were.
Yep.
Game 3 underway here. And in just a moment between these two Grand Prix champions, David Shiels and Brauin Duin. Again, both of them off to a 2-0 start. Black-white mid-range, pretty run-of-the-mill stuff, things that we've seen before. We've seen it win tournaments. Charlie Reinhardt did win a tournament when we were in Jersey.
Yep.
A little bit different take here from Shiels. I'd say a little bit more traditional, but the strategy is still the same.
A little more controlling, I would say, his list than the winning list we saw in New Jersey.
Shiels be on the play here. Taking a look at his opening, you see it Thoughtsy's address as well. You saw him also change the way that he sideboarded for game number 3. I believe that he brought in a lot more discards since he knew he was going to be on the play this game.
Yes.
So here is the Thoughtsy's to lead things off. You see Brian's hand. He's got a Seder Wayfinder, an Obsidat's 8, a Vraska, an Ultimate Price, an Overgrown Tomb, a Temple Garden, and a Temple of Silence. A much slower hand, no acceleration. I think the thought process here is this Ultimate Price will protect me from a pack rat or a life being zombie.
These are the kind of draws where decks like Junk Reanimator, and you can lump Jund monsters and a variety of other decks into this category, look eminently beatable when they just don't have a mana accelerator. These kind of hands, you know, I'm not saying Brian's supposed to mulligan because a lot of your hands are going to look like this, but this is the problem playing the deck. When you don't have one of your mana creatures, you're not up to very much.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely understand why he would keep this hand. You know, he's got a Temple, he's got a Wayfinder, he's got an Ultimate Price. I mean, he's got things to do, but surprise, surprise, Thoughtseize is able to blow things up.
Yeah.
That's what Thoughtseize does. And it's going to take care of Obsidat's 8. Shiels doesn't want to know what that can do, so he's going to take that card. Brian draws a copy of Godless Shrine. He'll play a Temple of Silence, take a look at the top card, consult the grip, figure out where he wants to put this one before kicking it back over to Shiels.
Well, these hands that Brian has right now, these feel like the kind of draws that are not favored against any opponent.
Yeah, I would
the
agree.
no mana acceleration and just kind of a mixture of weird stuff.
Put that top card to the bottom before kicking it back over to Shiels, who will draw a card. Looks like he picked up another copy of Thoughtseize. I believe he also has a Duress in his hand as well. I think the only thing he might be missing at this point is just a couple of lands. He's going to play a Duress. See what Brian picked up for the turn. It looks like it was just a land and Godless Shrine. So Shiels will write down that land, and then he'll figure out what card he wants to take. You see BBD point to the shrine there for Shiels, let him know this is what I drew for the turn.
Alan Latino
And again, because he put the top card to the bottom, we know that a mystery card is coming here.
Latino and Joseph Stasio, please come to the stage.
Ultimate Price, bite the dust. Godless Shrine tap, pass the turn back. Shiels could have cast Thoughtseize that turn, would have had to take 4 damage to do it. 2 from the Godless Shrine coming into play untapped, 2 from Thoughtseize itself, but there's really nothing worth Thoughtseizing there.
That might be the bigger issue here. He's not really that interested in getting the Vraska, and he can do that down the line if he's feeling so inclined. So give Brian a couple extra draw steps to maybe find something expensive and relevant, and then get that with the discard spell.
Seder Wayfinder turns over a couple of lands and a Courser of Crucifix. Brian does take a Temple of Malady to his hand before passing the turn back over to Shiels, who will take his third turn. Starts by drawing a Plains. You see the Godless Shrine over there as well. Again, we know about the Thoughtseize. Here's a Read the Bones. Shiels is going to take 2, go down to 16, and set up his draws. You see another Read the Bones and a Temple of Silence are the cards that he's looking at. Read the Bones, you got to say, a card that's really underplayed, given how powerful it is.
The problem is that the mono black devotion decks are basically priced into playing 4 copies of Underworld Connections because they need to add to their devotion count. But I agree with you. Read the Bones, and a spot like this is, I mean, that's how powerful is that right now?
Wayfinder number 2, going to turn over a couple of lands, an Elvish Mystic and a Bile Blight. Brian will take a Temple of Silence. Shiels for his Read the Bones took another copy of Read the Bones and a Hero's Downfall. So that's what was added to his grip. Brian going to play that Temple of Malady that we already knew about. Put the top card to the bottom and pass the turn back. So a small clock here for Brian. Pack Rat the draw here for Shiels. Things are starting to get a little bit ugly here for the Junk Reanimator player.
Just not a lot going on. And again, David can take care of that Vraska next turn if he's feeling, this turn or next turn if he's feeling so inclined.
You do see the Pack Rat again there in his hand. A couple copies of Hero's Downfall, Thoughtseize. Another copy of Read the Bones. If he wants to play that, he'd have to go down to 13 to do so. Might not be that appealing right now for Shiels. maybe it is, and it is. So down to 13 he will go. Set up his draw even further. Take a look at a couple of cards. Temple of Silence and a Gobbler Shrine. Now he'll consult the grip. And he says, I don't want either one of these lands, so 1 and 2. Lifebane Zombie and a Connections. A lot of 3-mana spells over there.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he shipped. I think that I would have kept one of the 2 lands in that spot. Feels like he could just use more mana, and if he's going to play a Goblin Shrine tap that turn anyway, I believe that I would have just kept the Temple.
I think one of the reasons I want to keep a land as well is because I want land number 5 in case I draw an Obsidian or a Blood Baron.
Yeah.
Because if one of those comes rolling off the top of his deck, he can't play it. Attack for 2 here. Brauin just going to play a Temple of Silence past the turn back. This is a copy of Thoughtseize. Doesn't need one of those either. Again, Shiels' hand is very, very powerful, but his hand is really just not lining up great right now. The ability to play 2 spells in 1 turn is what he's looking to do.
Yes.
That's when his deck is at its best, and that's when these black-based Devotion decks are very, very difficult to beat. He's not really in 2-spell-a-turn territory yet. He's going to play Lifebane Zombie. Take a look at the grip here. Duin has lands and a Vraska, and I think now he has actually cast Thoughtseize to take care of that Vraska.
Yeah, and this is still fine for David. The race is still manageable. He's going to be taking 2, but Pack Rat can sweep that up pretty soon. But I still feel like I would have wanted that Temple last turn, given the way this is all shook out.
Yeah. Thoughtseize takes the Vraska. Shields goes down to 9, passes the turn back over to Duin, who, to be fair, Brauin's able to draw a removal spell or some sort of actions, well, he's probably doing okay. There's a Grizzly Salvage. That's not a bad place to start. But I think that Grizzly Salvage wants to find a real, real card.
For sure. But, David's life total is definitely under some amount of duress. I'm assuming he's not blocking here. He's going to 7. If he doesn't draw an untapped land next turn, he's not going to block with the Pack Rat either. So then he's looking at 5, and then all of a sudden, something like a Blood Baron or an Obsidian off the top could steal the game here for Brauin.
So your assumption there right away was no block. I mean, if I'm Shiels in that position, I actually kind of want to block. I just want to keep my life total high, and you immediately just said, you think he's going to take 2, which Shiels did very quickly.
I think that David has to get the game over with semi-quickly here. He can't wait all day. There's too many powerful draws in Brauin's deck.
Couple copies of Pack right here for Shiels. Brauin's going to cast a Grizzly Salvage. He needs a big one. There's a Salvage, an Elvish Mystic, a Satyr Wayfinder, another Salvage, and an Elvish Mystic. That is not what he's looking for.
Yeah, he needs one of his Haymakers here. He's got all the mana he needs.
Does he take a Wayfinder or does he take a Mystic? That's the question. Looks like he's going to go with the Wayfinder. The rest of the cards are going to go to the graveyard. Again, a Blood Baron or an Obsidian is what Duin is looking for. He's going to untap. He's going to take a draw. That'll work. Blood Baron with Scopa.
Yep.
Right off the top. Taps that 5 mana. Gonna play a Temple Garden tapped, and he's going to pass the turn back. It only takes 2 hits from this to get the job done now.
This might be one of those draws that steals it here for Brauin. I don't think David can get out of this.
Shields going to take a draw. It's a swamp.
He has 1 Elspeth in his list.
He'd have to somehow be able to cobble together, Elspeth into land, which involves an Underworld Connections activation.
Yes.
So that might have to be what he does. The Salvage missed for Duin, but his draw step did not. Blood Baron with Scopa looking to steal this game for the Junk Reanimator player. Shields, again, looking at a couple copies of Hero's Downfall. Does have Thoughtseize in his hand, but those aren't going to help right now. The only card that really matters in this situation, it seems, is the Underworld Connections that he has.
Billy Wallace.
And to me, I don't see any other way for him to proceed from here except by going Underworld Connections and finding Elspeth. I suppose there's 1 copy of Whip of Erebos in Dave's sideboard. If he's brought that in, he can theoretically race with Lifelink, but I would be surprised if he brought in his Whip in this matchup. Feels like that's more for either really linear beatdown decks where you're willing to pay 4 mana to give your team Lifelink, or for removal heavy matchups. Neither of which is the case here with Brauin.
What that means to me is that everything that he can do is centered around Underworld Connections.
Yes.
And he has come to that conclusion. He plays the Connections on his swamp and passes the turn back over to Duin, who will draw cards, a copy of Sylvan Caryatid. That one does not matter all that much. The thing that matters on BBD's side of the table is that gold creature, Blood Baron of Scopa. You see him taking a look at his mana, taking a look at the graveyard, seeing what his options are. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty easy one. Attack here for 4. He's going to go up to 19. Shields is going to go down to 3. Couple of mana here for Duin. He's going to play a Satyr Wayfinder that we knew about. Take a look at a couple of cards. The land is going to go to the grip. Hopes that's 8. Another Caryatid and a Bioblight will go to the bin. He's going to play a Gobbler Shrine tapped. There's your Caryatid. This is a passing of the turn. It's going to have to be Elspeth. plus a land. That's a pack rat. That's not going to help. Maybe a whip will. He draws a card. It's Hero's Downfall, an extension of the hand. Brauin to win. Going to win this match off the back of a top deck Blood Baron with Scope over David Shiels. 2-1. Junk Reanimator moves on.
Well, it wasn't just, it's easy to point to the Blood Baron, and maybe Blood Baron kind of wins that game no matter how it gets paced, but Dave was spinning his tires there for multiple turns and dealt a lot of damage to himself. Multiple copies of Thoughtseize, multiple copies of Read the Bones. He had 2 Pack-Rats and playing a Lifebane Zombie. It's not like he didn't have the tools to raise, but by the time Blood Baron came down, David was at 7 from mostly self-inflicted damage and some Wayfinder hits.
BBD, 3-0. Shiels moves down to 2-1. Junk Reanimator, an interesting deck, all things being told. Again, not a deck that you see a lot of on the Open Series or truthfully in Standard.